The politics of marijuana have been in the news this week. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said he'd sign a bill expanding options for medical marijuana in his state. And at Wednesday's White House briefing, the deputy press secretary reiterated the administration's hands-off views toward pot.
While the prosecution of drug traffickers remains an important priority, the president and the administration believe that targeting individual marijuana users, especially those with serious illnesses and their caregivers, is not the best allocation of federal law enforcement resources.
Now, 27 states plus the District of Columbia have laws on the books that either decriminalize or allow for some use of marijuana. 2 states even sell pot for recreational use and regulate that industry. And yet the federal government considers it so dangerous that it classifies cannabis as a Schedule I drug. That's the highest classification alongside heroin and methamphetamine. Cocaine is a Schedule II drug.
So with us here now is Dan Riffle from the Marijuana Policy Project. Welcome. Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let me start us off. So what's the biggest obstacle you have as a lobbyist for pot?
Getting in the door, probably.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks who have this misconception that I'm going to walk in a tie-dye T-shirt and flip-flops, and they're surprised to see a former prosecuting attorney in a suit walk in, and who can enunciate and talk clearly, and has a firm grasp of the issues. So I think a lot of folks, getting past that first misconception is probably the biggest obstacle.
And do they stereotype you anyway? Is it once you are in the door? Or
well,
no?
It depends on the office. The friendly members don't. Some of the other members do. It's all a veneer to those guys.
I wonder what it's like over time, because one of the things I found fascinating is public attitudes toward legalization of marijuana have changed. I want to make sure I get these numbers right. In 1969, Gallup asked, do you think pot should be legal? Just 12% of people said it should. In 2001, that number had more than doubled, almost tripled to 34%. By the end of 2012, it was at 48%, almost half of the public thinking it should be legal. I'm not going to ask you how it's changed since 1969. You probably haven't been doing it that long, but how has it changed just in your time in terms of, are people more receptive on the Hill?
Yeah, I started at MPP in 2009, which was sort of the very beginning of that real rapid shift. It's been going up 2 to 3 points in pretty much every poll every year for the last 5 to 6 years. You mentioned Gallup. Pew has us at 52. There's some other polls that have us all the way up at 56. So it's public opinion has been shifting very rapidly. It's actually interesting if you overlay the graph on marijuana with gay marriage, it's almost identical.
It's very similar, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Great
so
point.
it's been a quick shift over the last few years, and it's changed a lot, but for the better, at least for me.
Quickly, because that point is really interesting. Do you think that, what is it that it often gets ascribed to, well, younger people are more libertarian, sort of, live and let live. Is the same mentality that's moving gay marriage, moving pot? Were they just separate and just happen to sort of be overlaid similarly?
I think it's more coincidental. I think on our issue, there's a lot of competing opinions about it. Personally, I think the big shift is due mostly to more information being out there. For 40 years, we were fighting a war on drugs, and the only information that anybody got about marijuana was from the government, usually in the form of some sort of taxpayer-funded propaganda campaign to say that marijuana is a Schedule I drug on par with heroin and other hard drugs, when in fact it's demonstrably safer than alcohol. It's not associated with violence and reckless behavior. Nobody's ever overdosed on marijuana. We're talking about a relatively benign subject. So I think as people have gotten exposed to that idea over the years, with the internet being out there, people have their own more sources of information available to them. The more we have this conversation, the more people learn and understand that marijuana is not what they've thought it was.
So on the state level, your group is working to put ballot initiatives for recreational marijuana, and I think there's 1 in 2014 and 5 in 2016. Is it easier on the state level than on the federal level at this point to get these things passed?
Yeah, it's going to be a little while until the federal government moves, although we're starting to see it shift now. We've got 18 co-sponsors on a bill to leave marijuana policy up to the states. There's 25, 26 co-sponsors on other bills to address some of the minor issues with the state-federal conflict. So support is growing in Congress, but certainly in the states it's a little easier. We actually have 3 divisions at MPP. We do our federal lobbying, and then in the states we have state-level lobbying, where we talk with state legislators. Illinois and New Hampshire state legislatures just passed medical marijuana bills and were signed by the governor earlier this year. And then our other division is state initiatives. That department basically funded, managed, and directed the campaign in Colorado last year, the Amendment 64 campaign, and we're going to do something similar in Alaska in 2014, and there's several states on the docket for 2016.
And Jackie, I just want to jump one last thing, just because I'm thinking of it, Dan. I want to just hit again on the libertarian piece of all this. There is a strain of libertarianism across this country. Ron Paul tapped into it. Rand Paul is certainly on marijuana, on gay marriage. He's talked about it. Do you find you're someone who is interacting probably as much, if not more, than anyone on this side of this issue with members of Congress?
Right.
Do you find that sort of the libertarian argument working? Because I know you've laid out this is a benign substance, this is less.
Sure.
But do you use that piece of the argument, or do you find members sort of bringing that back to you?
Well, it depends on the office. You know, if I'm talking to Rand Paul, obviously I'll make that
Right.
distinction. You know, there are some co-sponsors on the bill, Justin Amash from Michigan, who's a libertarian-minded Republican. But I think, you know, there's a long list of reasons why marijuana should be taxed and regulated like alcohol. And the notion that, you know, it's your body and your choice and personal freedoms is only one of those. There's, you know, the racially discriminate enforcement patterns. There's the tax money that we're leaving on the table. There's the, you know, money that we're wasting on failed enforcement. You know, there's a long list of reasons, and the libertarian argument is just one of many.
Got it.
Dan Riffle, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Dan.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.